Hey guys, welcome to Quinian's Budget Crafts. So for this one, I said I talked about some of the tools I use you don't normally find in a crafter's toolbox. Gonna have to forgive the camera's autofocus. I tried turning it off and that really doesn't help here. But anyway, so let's start out with the obvious big giant thing in the room here, the drill press. So the drill press is super handy for just everything, really. I mean, if you need to drill a straight hole and you're having trouble with a handheld drill, this thing will do it for you. Like I said before, though, I'm broke, man. I don't have a whole bunch of money. So my press, if I can get this thing in view here, probably not. Let's do it this way. So my press is made by Wind Tools. It's not an expensive brand. It's like 80 bucks. As you can see, it's not particularly huge. It's too big to get on camera, but it's not really that big. You're not going to be drilling, foot-long holes or whatever. But if you want a whole bunch of straight holes in one go, then this is definitely something you're going to want to have. Really depends on what you're making. If you're only doing foam stuff, you probably don't got to worry about it. It's just, if you're doing dice boxes and things like I do. This is, if you pop the lid, this is a variable speed drill. So that's handy. You do have to do it manually. There's no knob or anything. But I mean, if you need to drill a whole bunch of holes, drill press, definitely. 80 bucks, can't be beat. Now, if you're not drilling a bazillion holes, man, that thing is dirty. If you're not drilling a bazillion holes, you can just use a cheap little corded drill. This one's, it's a Genesis. I mean, what does this thing cost? Like 20 bucks or something? They're not expensive. It's not very strong, but it will do the trick. This one does have the impact selector switch on it if you wanted to, I don't know, drill in concrete or something. But yeah, I mean, corded drill, that'll run for as long as your power is on, I guess. So that's an option. Or you can go with a cordless drill. That works too. My cordless drill is not very small compared to, they're the same size. So it doesn't really save me any space or anything. I just don't have to deal with the cord dangling by me. But my cheap, I think this is Black & Decker, cordless drill, it's also not very strong compared to the corded drill. So again, depends on what you're doing. Where any of these drills are super handy, at least in tabletop stuff, is if you don't have a lathe. I did take a bunch of parts from different people on Thingiverse and try to piece together a 3D printable lathe, minus the motor, obviously. It'd run off of like this drill or something. It kind of worked. It's got issues. I'm still working on it. Eventually, I might actually get that done, but if you don't have a lathe, you don't have a 3D printer, then yeah, one of these things you can do little fancy posts and that kind of stuff. Pretty simple. You just chuck it in the drill and hit it with some sandpaper or some files or something like that. So yeah, drills are definitely useful. So now I've also cut up a bunch of boards and whatnot. A lot of the stuff you can probably cut with a razor knife. You don't really need any kind of saw, or you just use a little hand saw. You've seen that thing 100 times. If you do want to use a power saw, though, the cheapest way I could recommend to go about that is a little jigsaw. Again, Black & Decker, pretty sure. Not expensive. These things are like 15 bucks at Walmart. It says it's variable speed. That's kind of a joke. It depends on how hard you squeeze the trigger. So yeah, just put a guide, clamp your straight edge and then run this along that so you have something nice and straight to run it in. If you don't have a guide, it'll get kind of squirrely on you, but yeah, if you do want a powered saw to cut stuff like the hardboard or whatever, this would probably be your cheapest way to go, really. Speaking of clamping stuff, got that vise that I showed before. You've seen it a couple times, and these little clamps. They're in the dollar tool bin or whatever that Walmart's got. I wouldn't suggest. I'm not going to link any of this stuff on Amazon. You can get a lot of it cheaper at Walmart, except for the Wind tools. But Walmart's got a brand called Hyper Tough, I think. They're just basically Wind. It's the same stuff. They're cheap tools. They might break, but for what you paid for them, whatever. But yeah, these little clamps here, they're not super strong. You're not going to be applying like hundreds of pounds of force or whatever, but you really don't need to. And then, of course, the vise. This one could be mounted to a surface with the little holes, and it's got the thingamajig here so you can swivel it. I don't really worry about all that stuff. And of course, you could change the jaws on this. You can just unscrew the jaw. I don't know if you can see that or not. You can just unscrew this jaw and put on like a plastic one or something softer if you're worried about crushing your stuff. And it's got the little anvil face on it. I don't ever worry about actually mounting it to anything. I'm not, like I said, I'm not putting hundreds of pounds of force on anything. But this is super handy for just holding stuff for you. I mean, that's literally what a vise is for. But you can just leave this sitting on your crafting bench. It's heavy enough to hold itself in place. You can stick a dowel in there, whatever it is you're working on, and it's going to stay where you want it. What I use these for is for clamping my straight edge to whatever it is I'm trying to cut. I just put the straight edge on the thing, and then, put the clamp on it, and then I can use the jigsaw or the razor knife, whatever, and just run straight down the edge. I don't have to worry about the things scooting around on me. Although, with the jigsaw blades absolutely will cut steel or tin or aluminum, whatever the heck this thing's made of. Do not run your jigsaw blade against this. Only run the edge of the jigsaw plate against this. If you were to put the blade against it, it's going to cut into it for sure. So only put the thing there. So when you clamp it on, you don't want to clamp your straight edge to your marks because there's a little space between the edge of the plate where it's going to be sitting on the straight edge and the blade itself. So you just want to put the blade where you're going to be cutting and then put the straight edge up against that so it's all nice and straight or whatever, and then clamp this down. Speaking of measuring things, if you want to get overly precise, you can find yourself one of these. I've heard them called micrometers and digital calipers, and I don't know. I assume both search terms would work if you're looking online. Don't look online, especially not for this particular brand, which I'm not even going to try to say that brand. Anyway, these things are expensive, super expensive, particularly this brand. I found mine at a pawn shop for $30. So as long as the thing is measuring correctly, there is nothing wrong with pawn shop tools. This particular one has inches and millimeter adjustment on it, which is super handy because I use both when I'm crafting. And it's got the little lock screw and all that. So these are really, really good for getting very precise, repeatable measurements because you can put it on whatever size you want and then lock your thing down so it's not going to move on you, and then just repeat that all the way down whatever it is you're working on. So yeah, calipers, digital calipers, micrometer, whatever you want to call it. These are super handy, especially when dealing with really, really small things like you tend to deal with in tabletop crafting. It is far more accurate than a ruler, for me anyway. Definitely not something you're going to find in most hobby crafters' collection, but it's totally worth having if you can find one for a good price. So I'm pretty sure you have literally never seen me use this because I actually don't recommend using it, because if you don't know what you're doing, you're going to burn things and possibly create toxic fumes. So keep that in mind. But a wood burning kit, you can pick these up at Walmart for like 10 or 15 bucks. They're really cheap. Well, the cheap ones are anyway. These things are pretty handy for all kinds of stuff. So definitely don't go carving foam with this because there's no temperature control. It's got one setting, and that setting is hot. It's too hot for foam. It's largely too hot for hot glue because it'll actually cause it to burn and off gas. You don't want that. You can dip the top of it or the tip of it in like a wet sponge and then work on hot glue. I know you've seen people soldering do that. It does work, but it's risky. I definitely don't recommend that. What I use this for is burning leather and wood. So, you're pretty safe there. It's got the little stand because these little fins here do get very hot too. It's not just the tip. This whole anything metal, it's hot. So, don't touch these little fins. You'll burn the crap out of yourself. It sits in a neat little thing. It's got a whole bunch of tips in there. The other thing I use it for, as you can probably see from the shiny bits, is soldering. Whenever I do the electrical stuff with all the switches and things I've shown before, this is what I use to solder that stuff with. If you're not going to be doing any soldering, woodworking, or leatherworking, you could probably skip this because it really has limited to absolutely no use on foam. But it is a thing I use. You might see it show up in the channel from time to time, depending on what I'm making. So if you're wondering, hey, what the heck is that thing? That's what it is. Something that does have use in foam and wood and leather and pretty much anything are rotary cutters. Somebody in the Facebook group posted this one, or like the whole kit, 2-3 days ago, something like that, which made me happy to see because these little tools are just the greatest thing ever. I don't think this even has a name brand. It just says mini rotary made in China. So, I I don't even know how you'd look this thing up, but yeah, this little rotary tool is great. Sounds like a dentist drill, kind of acts like one. It's got a whole bunch of different collet sizes, and you'll find in the kit. So I mean, it'll hold any of your attachments. Super easy. You don't even need tools to take the pieces in and out. It's great. If you do want a more powerful variable speed one, but you don't want to shell out the money for Dremel brand, because seriously, they overprice their stuff, this one, made by Ryobi, is great. It's got the on-off switch. It's got variable speed from 10 to 30. I don't know what those numbers represent, but 10 is you're barely doing anything really, so it's super controlled, whereas 30 is you touch it and it vaporizes parts of the thing you touched. So, there's that. The model on this one is HT230 if you want this particular one. It's supposed to have a piece that screws onto the collar here or whatever, because there's like a hose that goes on, so you've got the little bitty wand instead of the whole machine. I lost those parts, so same thing. You push the button, you can change the thing out, finger tension. You don't really need tools, which is really nice. Like I said, if you found the whole kit for this, it's got the hose thingy, which is also really nice. You're not holding on to the motor the whole time. But yeah, you can use rotary tools for, well, you may not want to use it for foam because it'll make dust and bad things, but you can use it for foam if you want to. Wear a respirator or something. Use it for wood, definitely. But yeah, these things have quite a few uses. They're pretty awesome. Actually, I like both of them a lot, depending on what it is I'm trying to work on. If you don't have a rotary tool of any kind, like I said, you don't need to shell out for Dremel brand. You're paying for the name brand a little bit. I mean, not knocking Dremel, they do make good stuff, but you are paying for that name brand some. So yeah, I mean, the Ryobi or the even this little tiny made in China, whatever this thing is, it is really good actually. Oh, test right. Is it test right? I don't know. Here, there you go. You can just pause it there and copy that into your search engine, I guess. But yeah, these things are great. If you don't have one, definitely get one of these. It'll be really helpful when you're doing the wood pieces of your crafting, especially if you're trying to make the wood like deteriorated or aged, or trying to cut little gouges in it or patterns. Or it's a lot safer and easier than using a knife, that is for sure. On the wood stuff, that is. And one last kind of odd tool that I like to use that you probably wouldn't see in a tabletop crafter's kit, but you're definitely going to find this in a seamstress or leather worker, people that do that kind of thing, is a rotary cutter. Squeeze the handle, blade pops out. It's basically a razor sharp pizza cutter. I mean, it's literally exactly what it is. And it's got a little locking thing on the side to keep the blade popped out, which I don't recommend doing that, really, because it's too easy to hit your own hand with it. And this thing is a razor blade. This is really, really handy for cutting leather mostly, or fabric. You can use it on tissues and paper towels to get super nice straight cuts. That's really nice because trying to cut that with scissors just doesn't really work out for me. If you're doing dice boxes or anything, you can cut the felt with this. I think I might have done that in the dice box video, actually. The good thing about the rotary cutter over like your standard X-Acto knife or something is you're not dragging the blade across it, so there's no risk of catching the material and making it pull. This is, it rolls. It's a rotary cutter, so it's just going to push down and attempt to split the material as opposed to dragging across it. So if you're worried about whatever you're cutting getting pulled screwy and not cutting straight, this is definitely the way to go. It doesn't work very well on foam because it just crushes the foam. In that case, you do need draw cuts, actual slicing action, whereas this is more of a crushing cut. So maybe not the best thing to use for foam, but if you're doing any sort of fabric, material, felt, tissues, paper towel, whatever, yeah, rotary cutter is definitely going to be my choice. I don't know what these cost. They're not expensive. They're like $10 or something. They come with a little pack of blades. I have literally never had to change the blade on this, and I've been using it for about a year. And I use mine on leather and stuff, so yeah, these blades definitely hold up. So, of course, there probably are a few more assorted tools that I forgot to mention or something. If I use them in a video and realize that I haven't ever mentioned them, I'll say something. Otherwise, just put in the comments and be like, hey, what the heck is that thing? But I hadn't used most of this stuff on camera because, like I said before, I mean, the tools don't really fit the whole budget thing, but what tool really does? And I started thinking about it, most of my tools, except for this thing, are all super cheap, and I did get this at a really good discount, so I'm not counting that as an expensive tool for me anyway. But I do have a bunch of tools that I do like to use. I mostly do them off camera, but perhaps I won't anymore now that you have actually seen the things I actually use. I just usually try to do the methods on camera that I know that most people are going to have these. They're going to have X-Acto knives, they're going to have rulers and stuff. And then the stuff that I figure people don't have, that's what I used off camera. But, I mean, maybe seeing this, you'll change your mind and decide, hey, you could probably afford some of these. And of course, don't run out and buy all this stuff at once. That would be dumb. Just buy what you need for what you're doing. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention this thing, heat gun. You will see this show up in the next video. I'm using it to get rid of some glue gun strings. The thing you need to worry about with this heat gun, though, a couple things actually. Its settings here, the low and high settings. I forgot what low is. It's like 800 or 900 degrees, and high is 1500, at least on this particular model. Your model may vary. And also the nozzle here, the whole metal thing, gets super hot. Has a little hook to hang it on. Use the little hook. Don't set this on your mat. Don't use this on your mat. You'll destroy your mat. And it's super hot. It kind of looks like a hairdryer and sounds like one. It's not. It's a hairdryer on steroids. So careful with the heat guns. But these are really useful for getting rid of hot glue strings. If you've done some sort of hot glue project, you've got strings just everywhere, this will get rid of them pretty quick. It can also be used to manipulate foam a little bit, but again, I don't know that I'd really actually recommend doing that, because if you don't know what you're doing, it's real easy to melt the foam and make really bad gases, so please don't. Killing yourself would be bad. Of course, all these tools absolutely can be dangerous and cause harm to the end user and everyone around them, so be safe with your tools. Don't hurt yourself, don't hurt anyone around you. And with the tool display out of the way, I think I'm going to go ahead and take a break and go enjoy the holidays and all that stuff that I mentioned before. So go ahead and get yourself whatever tools you think you're going to need. Don't get the ones you don't think you're going to need. And of course, the usual, if you want to support the channel, you can do that on Patreon or Ko-fi. I've got Amazon affiliate links on my website. I've got an Etsy store where I'm selling rollers. There's options everywhere. Pick one or none, up to you. Either way, thank you for watching, everybody. Go enjoy the holidays, and I'll catch you on the next one.